Museum-piece, muttered Gordon furiously. Said James, grumbled Henry. For a chance like this, he wouldn't have minded being a museum-piece himself. The jealous engines all ignored Thomas when they saw him at the junction. Thomas didn't care. He was too excited. Thomas asked Percy and Toby. Said Percy. Added Toby. He and Percy wanted to go with Thomas, but they knew that someone had to stay and run the branch line while he was away. Thomas asked his driver every morning. Laughed his driver. Thomas grinned. He chuckled. Said the fireman. And that, of course, made Thomas more excited than ever. At last the day came. A large crowd came to the junction to see Thomas off, and the Fat Controller was there too. He said, everyone gave 3 cheers and Thomas set off. They ran across the island and over the bridge leading to the other railway. It was a slow journey, but at last they reached a place Thomas's driver called Carnforth, where they rested for the night in a big shed. The next day they went on. At Skipton, Thomas stopped for a drink and to let a goods train overtake him. While they waited, it began to rain. In a signal box a little way ahead, the signalman opened his level crossing gates for Thomas and set his signals to clear. Suddenly, he heard a crack and then a rattle from the level crossing. The lock on the gate had broken, and the wind was swinging the gate across the rails. Steam appeared above the trees as Thomas grew near. Exclaimed the signalman, and quickly resetting the signal to danger, he ran to mend the gate. Thomas had never felt happier. His fire was bright, and even the rain didn't depress him. They neared a signal. Its arm was up, showing that the line ahead was clear. Puffed Thomas happily. He was just passing the signal when he heard a clang as the signal arm fell to danger. Cried the driver and put the brakes on hard. Thomas began, but then he saw, just in front, a heavy level crossing gate swinging towards him across the line. The signalman tried to stop it, but the gate was wet and it slipped from his hand. Groaned Thomas as he skidded along the rails, but the rain had made the rails slippery and he couldn't. He slithered helplessly. He was still moving when he reached the level crossing. With a loud crack, the gate broke against his buffer beam. Said Thomas and stopped. The signalman ran to his telephone and then directed Thomas into a siding where an inspector examined him. His buffer beam was bent and one of his buffers was broken. Said the inspector. Wailed Thomas. Said the inspector. And with that, Thomas had to be content.